The morning sun rises over the ancient city of yore, casting long shadows across the ziggurats and merchant quarters as scribes prepare for another day of meticulous record-keeping. The year is 2100 BCE, and in a modest clay brick office near the harbor, a young accountant named Nanni dips his reed stylus in water, preparing to write what may be the most passive-aggressive business correspondence in human history. Before him lies a fresh clay tablet, its surface smooth and ready to receive the wedge-shaped marks that will transform his frustration into permanent written record. But Nanni doesn't know he's about to make history. He thinks he's simply documenting a business dispute about substandard copper ingots. What he's actually doing is helping to invent one of civilization's most enduring forms of communication. The complaint letter, welcome to ancient Mesopotamia, where the world's first accountants didn't just count barley and silver. They pioneered the art of written grievance, creating bureaucratic traditions that would echo through millennia. This is the story of how necessity, frustration, and an obsession with record-keeping combined to create something we still recognize today. The Formal Complaint. Chapter 1. The birth of paper trails in a paperless world. The reeds whisper in the morning breeze along the banks of the Euphrates as workers begin their daily journey to the temple complex of Enlil in the city of Nippur. Among them walks Ea, chief accountant to the temple administrator, his leather satchel heavy with the previous day's clay tablets. Each tablet represents hours of careful work, receipts for barley offerings, records of silver donations, inventories of livestock brought for sacrifice. But Ea carries more than simple records. Hidden among the routine accounting tablets is something unprecedented in human history: a formal written complaint about a merchant who delivered moldy grain to the temple stores. The complaint follows specific formats, uses standardized language, and creates a permanent record that can be referenced, copied, and used as evidence in future disputes. This isn't the first time humans have complained about poor service or defective goods. For thousands of years, people have expressed dissatisfaction with trades, purchases, and business relationships. But until the development of cuneiform writing in Mesopotamia, these complaints existed only in spoken form, temporary expressions of frustration that disappeared as soon as the words left the speaker's lips. The transformation from oral complaint to written grievance represents one of the most significant developments in human communication, though few people at the time recognized its importance. The ability to record complaints permanently changed the nature of business relationships, legal proceedings, and social interactions in ways that would influence civilization for millennia. Enlil's position as temple accountant places him at the center of this revolutionary development. Temples in ancient Mesopotamia function as much more than religious centers. They are economic institutions that manage vast agricultural holdings, employ hundreds of workers, and conduct complex trade relationships throughout the known world. The need to track these activities accurately has made temple accountants among the most skilled practitioners of the new technology of writing. The clay tablets that Enlil carries represent the cutting edge of information management technology. Each tablet is carefully prepared from local clay mixed with organic materials that prevent cracking as the clay dries. The surface is smooth to provide optimal writing conditions, and the size and shape are standardized to facilitate storage and retrieval. The cuneiform writing system itself has evolved from simple pictographic symbols to a sophisticated method for recording complex ideas and relationships. The wedge-shaped marks made by reed styluses can represent not just objects and quantities, but abstract concepts like obligation, dispute, and satisfaction. This linguistic sophistication makes it possible to record not just what happened, but how people feel about what happened. The temple archive, where Enlil stores his tablets, represents humanity's first systematic approach to information management. Clay tablets are organized by date, subject matter, and the individuals involved, Cross-referencing systems allow accountants to track complex relationships between different transactions and identify patterns of behavior among merchants and customers. But the real innovation lies not in the technology itself, but in how temple accountants like Ea-nāṣir use this technology to manage relationships and resolve disputes. The permanence of written records means that business relationships must be conducted with greater care and precision. Merchants who might previously have relied on their reputation and personal relationships now find themselves held accountable to written standards and documented agreements. The development of standardized complaint procedures reflects the growing complexity of Mesopotamian economic relationships. As trade networks expand and commercial transactions become more sophisticated, the informal methods used to resolve disputes in small communities prove inadequate for managing conflicts between parties who may never meet face-to-face. And Lelia's morning routine includes reviewing the previous day's complaints and determining which require formal response or investigation. A farmer from a distant village claims that temple agents shortchanged him for his barley delivery. A merchant protests that temple officials damaged his goods during inspection. A craftsman argues that payment for his work was calculated incorrectly. According to the agreed-upon standards, each complaint must be evaluated not just for its immediate merit, but for its potential impact on future relationships and precedents. Ea-nāṣir understands that how the temple responds to complaints affects its reputation throughout the region and influences whether merchants and farmers will continue to do business with the institution. The formal response system that Ea-nāṣir helps administer represents one of humanity's first bureaucratic processes. Complaints are acknowledged in writing, investigated according to established procedures, and resolved through documented decisions that create precedents for future cases. This systematic approach to dispute resolution helps maintain business relationships while protecting the temple's interests. The training required to become a temple accountant like Ea-nāṣir involves years of study in specialized schools that teach not only writing and arithmetic, but also the principles of fair dealing, evidence evaluation, and diplomatic communication. These schools produce graduates who understand that their role extends far beyond simple record keeping to include relationship management and conflict resolution. The social status enjoyed by skilled accountants reflects the value that Mesopotamian comprehend. Society places on accurate record keeping and fair dispute resolution. Ea-nāṣir enjoys respect and financial security that rivaled those of military officers and religious officials. His expertise in written communication makes him indispensable to the complex economic relationships that sustain urban civilization. The international dimensions of temple business require accountants like Ea-nāṣir to understand not only local customs and standards, but also the practices of distant trading partners. Complaints may involve disputes with merchants from other cities, regions, or even foreign countries, requiring diplomatic sensitivity as well as technical accuracy. The preservation of complaint records creates an invaluable resource for understanding business practices and resolving future disputes. Ea-nāṣir can reference complaints from previous years to identify patterns of behavior, verify claims about customary practices, and ensure consistent application of temple policies across different situations and individuals. The evolution from oral to written complaint systems reflects broader changes in Mesopotamian society as it transitions from kinship-based communities to urban civilizations governed by institutions and formal procedures. The ability to document grievances permanently supports the development of legal systems, commercial standards, and social norms that can operate across larger populations and geographic areas. As Ea-nāṣir arranges his tablets for the day's work, he represents not just an individual accountant, but a new type of professional whose skills are essential for managing the complex relationships that sustain civilization. His careful documentation of complaints and their resolution helps create the foundation for legal systems, commercial practices, and bureaucratic procedures that will influence human society for thousands of years. The birth of paper trails in a paperless world proves that technological innovation alone is insufficient for social progress. The real breakthrough comes when human creativity finds ways to use new technologies to solve persistent problems and improve the quality of life for entire communities. Chapter 2. The complaint that launched 1,000 tablets. Marketplace of your buzzes with the familiar sounds of commerce as merchant Ea-nāṣir examines the copper ingots that have just arrived from the mines of Dilmun. The metal gleams dully in the afternoon sun, but experienced eyes can see what casual observers might miss: subtle variations in color and texture that indicate inconsistent purity, rough surfaces that suggest careless smelting, and weights that seem suspicious even before formal measurement. Ea-nāṣir's customer, Nanni, waits impatiently for the inspection to conclude. He has traveled from the distant city of Ea-nāṣir specifically to purchase high-quality copper for his own trading ventures, and the long journey has made him eager to complete the transaction and begin his return trip. But what neither merchant realizes is that this routine business deal is about to produce the most famous complaint letter in ancient history. The copper trade represents one of the most sophisticated commercial relationships in the ancient world. Copper from the island of Dilmun, modern-day Bahrain, travels through complex networks of merchants, agents, and intermediaries before reaching customers throughout Mesopotamia and beyond. Each stage of this process requires careful documentation, quality assessment, and financial calculation. Exactly the kind of complex commercial relationship that benefits from formal complaint procedures. Nanni's expectations for this copper purchase are based on previous transactions and established commercial standards. He needs metal of specific purity for the craftsmen who work with him, and his own reputation depends on delivering materials that meet the expectations of his customers. The copper that Ea-nāṣir is offering clearly falls short of these standards, but the formal complaint process will allow Nanni to document his grievances in ways that protect his interests while maintaining business relationships. The preparation of Nanni's complaint letter follows procedures that have evolved over decades of commercial dispute resolution. First, he must document the specific nature of his grievances with precise language that leaves no room for misinterpretation. Second, he must reference the original agreement and any relevant standards or precedents that support his position. Third, he must propose specific remedies that allow Ea-nāṣir to address the problems without losing face or damaging their ongoing business relationship. The clay tablet that will preserve Nanni's complaint for over 4,000 years begins. As a standard commercial document, the scribe carefully prepares the clay surface and begins with formal salutations that establish the identity of both parties and the nature of their relationship. But as the complaint develops, it becomes clear that this is no routine business correspondence. To Ea-nāṣir, Nanni sends the following message. The tablet begins with conventional politeness. When you came, you said to me as follows: I will give Gimmelson fine quality copper ingots. You left then, but you did not do what you promised me. You put ingots which were not good before my messenger and said, if you want to take them, take them. If you do not want to take them, go away. The language of this complaint reveals sophisticated understanding of commercial relationships and diplomatic communication. Nanni documents not just the factual circumstances of the dispute, but also the emotional and social dimensions of Ea-nāṣir's behavior. The reference to dismissive treatment of his messenger indicates that the complaint involves questions of respect and professional courtesy as well as product quality. The specific details included in Nanni's complaint demonstrate the precision that effective business communication requires. Rather than making vague accusations about poor quality, he documents specific conversations, describes particular actions, and references measurable standards that can be verified by independent parties. This attention to detail transforms a personal grievance into a professional dispute that can be resolved through established procedures. The international dimensions of this complaint reflect the sophisticated trade networks that connect ancient Mesopotamian cities to suppliers and customers throughout the known world. Nanni's business relationships extend from his home base in Kanish to copper suppliers in Dilmun, creating commercial dependencies that require careful management and formal dispute resolution procedures. The preservation of this complaint tablet in Ea-nāṣir's house archive suggests that receiving formal complaints has become a routine aspect of commercial life that requires systematic record-keeping, rather than treating Nanni's complaint as an isolated incident. Ea-nāṣir maintains files that allow him to track disputes, monitor his reputation, and identify patterns that might require changes in his business practices. The diplomatic language used throughout the complaint reflects training and professional communication that has become essential for successful commercial relationships. The balance between firmness and courtesy, specificity and flexibility demonstrates sophistication in written communication that rivals modern business correspondence in its effectiveness and diplomatic sensitivity. The legal implications of formal complaint letters like Nanni's extend far beyond their immediate commercial purposes. These documents create precedents that influence future dispute resolution, establish standards for acceptable commercial behavior, and provide evidence that can be used in formal legal proceedings if informal resolution proves impossible. The emotional undertones of Nanni's complaint reveal the personal stress created by commercial disputes in societies where business relationships often determine economic survival. The wounded dignity apparent in his description of Ea-nāṣir's dismissive behavior shows how commercial conflicts affect not just financial interests, but social standing and professional reputation. The circulation of complaint letters among commercial networks serves multiple purposes beyond dispute resolution. These documents provide information about merchant behavior that helps other traders make informed decisions about potential business partners. They also establish reputations for reliability or unreliability that influence access to credit, trading opportunities, and professional associations. The standardization of complaint formats and procedures reflects the development of commercial culture that transcends local customs and individual relationships. The ability to conduct business according to predictable standards with partners from distant regions requires shared understanding of proper procedures, acceptable behavior, and dispute resolution methods. The training required to compose effective complaint letters has created a class of professional scribes who specialize in commercial communication. These specialists understand not only the technical aspects of writing, but also the diplomatic and legal considerations that effective business correspondence requires. Their expertise becomes essential for merchants who lack the education or skills to manage complex written communication. The economic impact of formal complaint systems extends throughout commercial networks as improved dispute resolution reduces the risks associated with long-distance trade and complex transactions. Merchants can engage in more sophisticated business relationships when they have confidence that problems can be resolved fairly and efficiently through established procedures. The social functions served by complaint letters extend beyond their immediate commercial purposes to include relationship maintenance, reputation management, and community standard setting. The public nature of these documents means that their content influences broader social expectations about acceptable behavior and appropriate responses to commercial conflicts. The technological innovations required to support widespread complaint letter systems include not only writing materials and techniques, but also filing systems, cross-referencing methods, and copying procedures that allow important documents to be preserved and referenced over time. These information management technologies become essential infrastructure for complex commercial societies. The cultural influence of complaint letter traditions can be traced through thousands of years of subsequent development in legal systems, commercial practices, and administrative procedures. The principles established by merchants like Nanni and Ea-nāṣir continue to influence how modern societies approach dispute resolution. relationship management, and professional communication. Modern business historians studying ancient Mesopotamian complaint letters find remarkable similarities to contemporary commercial dispute resolution procedures. The attention to detail, diplomatic language, and systematic approach developed by ancient accountants and merchants established patterns that remain relevant to modern business. Relationships and legal systems. The complaint that launched 1,000 tablets proves that effective communication systems emerge from practical necessity rather than theoretical planning. The need to manage complex commercial relationships in an increasingly sophisticated economy drove the development of formal complaint procedures that became models for administrative systems throughout human civilization. In the merchant quarters of ancient Yorware, Ea-nāṣir continues to deal with dissatisfied customers, and Nanni plans his next trading expedition. The foundations are being laid for communication systems that will influence human relationships for millennia. The clay tablets that preserve their disputes represent more than commercial records. They embody humanity's growing understanding that written communication can solve problems, preserve relationships, and create standards that benefit entire communities. Chapter 3. The School of Hard Knocks and Harder Klayang Yearning Gursu adjusts his grip on the reed stylus as master scribe and Lil-Bani circles the classroom like a hawk observing mice, his practiced eye identifying every incorrectly formed cuneiform sign before the student has even finished making the marks. The School of Edeba and Nippur has trained scribes for 3 generations. But today's lesson represents something new in the curriculum: the formal art of writing complaint letters that maintain business relationships while achieving desired outcomes. A complaint letter Master and Lil-Bani announces to his class of 20 young men. Their clay practice tablets arrayed before them like soldiers preparing for battle is not merely a record of grievance. It is a tool of diplomacy, a weapon of commerce, and a test of character. Write poorly, and you destroy relationships that took years to build. Write well, and you transform conflict into opportunity. The students, ranging in age from 14 to 20, represent the sons of merchants, temple administrators, and government officials, the future leaders of Mesopotamian commercial and administrative life. Their education in complaint letter composition reflects the growing recognition that written communication skills are essential for success in an increasingly complex society. Yearning Gursu's family background as son of a successful textile merchant has given him practical exposure to commercial disputes. But the formal training he receives at Edeba teaches him to understand complaint writing as both art and science. The techniques he learns here will determine his effectiveness as a business communicator and his ability to maintain profitable relationships throughout his career. The curriculum for complaint letter composition begins with analysis of successful examples that demonstrate effective structure, appropriate language, and diplomatic solutions. Students copy classic complaint letters word by word, absorbing the rhythms and patterns that make written communication effective. This copying process serves multiple purposes: practicing cuneiform formation, memorizing standard phrases, and internalizing the logic that guides effective business communication. Master Lil-Bani's teaching method emphasizes understanding the psychology of complaint recipients as well as the technical aspects of letter composition. Remember, he instructs while examining Yearning Gursu's practice tablet, the merchant who receives your complaint has his own interests, his own reputation to protect, his own understanding of events. Your letter must acknowledge these realities. While advancing your position, the practice exercises assigned to complaint letter students begin with simple scenarios based on common commercial disputes, delayed deliveries, substandard goods, incorrect measurements, and payment disagreements. As students demonstrate competence with basic situations, the exercises become more complex, involving international trade, diplomatic sensitivities, and multi-party disputes that require sophisticated understanding of commercial relationships. Yearning Gursu's current assignment involves composing a complaint letter on behalf of a temple administrator who received barley that was contaminated with sand and stones. The exercise requires him to document specific problems while maintaining the respectful tone appropriate for addressing a merchant who supplies the temple regularly and whose continued cooperation is essential for temple operations. The structure, taught for effective complaint letters, follows a standardized format that has evolved through decades of practical experience. The opening establishes the relationship between the parties and references the specific transaction in dispute. The body documents the problems with precise detail while avoiding language that might cause unnecessary offense. The conclusion proposes specific remedies and reaffirms the desire to maintain positive business relationships. The language instruction component of complaint. Letter education teaches students to balance firmness with courtesy, specificity with diplomacy, and urgency with patience. Students learn to recognize how different word choices affect the tone of their communication and how tone influences the likelihood of achieving desired outcomes. This linguistic sensitivity becomes crucial for success in commercial and administrative careers. The legal dimensions of complaint letter composition receive particular attention as students learn that their written communications may become evidence in formal dispute resolution proceedings. Master Al-Albani teaches students to document facts accurately, reference relevant standards and precedents, and avoid statements that cannot be supported with evidence. The practical workshop. Sessions that supplement classroom instruction give students hands-on experience with the complete complaint letter process. Working with actual merchants and administrators, students observe real disputes, participate in investigation procedures, and witness the implementation of solutions proposed in their practice letters. This practical experience helps students understand that effective complaint writing requires understanding of business operations as well as communication skills. The international trade scenarios used in advanced complaint letter exercises expose students to the diplomatic complexities of cross-cultural business relationships. Students learn to research the customs and expectations of different trading partners while maintaining consistency with Mesopotamian legal and commercial standards. This cross-cultural competence becomes essential as trade networks expand throughout the ancient world. The evaluation methods used to assess student progress in complaint letter composition emphasize practical effectiveness rather than just technical accuracy. Students are graded on their ability to achieve desired outcomes, maintain relationships, and create documents that serve their intended purposes. This practical orientation ensures that graduates can apply their skills effectively in real business situations. The advanced seminars offered to the most promising students include instruction in complaint letter innovation and adaptation. As commercial relationships become more sophisticated and dispute scenarios become more complex, successful practitioners must be able to develop new approaches while building on established foundations. These advanced courses produce the communications specialists who will lead the next generation of commercial and administrative development. The networking opportunities provided through EDABA education prove as valuable as the formal instruction. Students develop relationships with classmates who will become their business partners, customers, and professional colleagues throughout their careers. The shared experience of learning complaint letter composition creates bonds that facilitate future commercial cooperation and mutual support. The library resources maintained by the school include the most comprehensive collection of complaint letters in the ancient world. Students have access to examples from different time periods, various commercial sectors, and diverse geographic regions. This extensive collection allows students to study the evolution of complaint letter practices and identify innovations that might be applicable to contemporary situations. The continuing education programs offered to school graduates ensure that practicing professionals can update their skills as commercial practices evolve and new challenges emerge. Master Al-Albani regularly conducts workshops that introduce innovations in complaint letter technique, and provide opportunities for professional development that keep graduates current with best practices. The research activities conducted by faculty members contribute to ongoing improvements in complaint letter effectiveness and efficiency. Systematic analysis of successful and unsuccessful complaint letters helps identify factors that influence outcomes and guides the development of improved teaching methods and practical techniques. The reputation of EDABA graduates in complaint letter composition has made the school a source of competitive advantage for the city of Nippur in its commercial relationships with other regions. Merchants and administrators trained at the school are sought after by businesses throughout Mesopotamia, enhancing the city's economic and political influence. The social impact of systematic complaint letter education extends throughout Mesopotamian society as improved dispute resolution reduces conflicts and enhances commercial cooperation. The standardization of communication practices facilitates trade relationships and contributes to economic development that benefits entire communities. The cultural preservation functions served by complaint letter education ensure that the knowledge and techniques developed through practical experience are systematically transmitted to future generations. The school's curriculum and library resources preserve innovations that might otherwise be lost while providing foundation for continued development and improvement. Modern educational institutions studying ancient Mesopotamian scribal schools find remarkable similarities to contemporary professional communication programs. The emphasis on practical application, ethical considerations, and relationship management established by schools like EDABA anticipated educational approaches that remain relevant to modern business and administrative training. The quality control systems developed for evaluating student progress in complaint letter composition establish standards that influence professional practice throughout the region. Graduates who demonstrate competence according to school standards carry credibility that enhances their effectiveness and opens career opportunities throughout their professional lives. The School of Hard Knocks and Harder Clay proves that effective education emerges from combining theoretical knowledge with practical application in ways that prepare students for real-world challenges. The complaint letter curriculum developed at EDABA demonstrates how specialized communication skills can be systematically taught and continuously improved through dedicated educational institutions. In the classrooms where Yearning Jersu continues to practice his cuneiform formation and Master Anlobani refines his teaching methods. The foundations are being established for professional communication standards that will influence human civilization for thousands of years. The lessons learned from hard clay tablets create soft skills that enable commerce, diplomacy, and administration throughout the ancient world. Chapter 4. The Royal Bureaucrats and Their Perfectly Worded Ratha. Palace Scribal Office in Babylon hums with quiet intensity as Chief Administrator Marduk-nāṣir reviews the morning's correspondence, his weathered fingers turning clay tablets. With the practiced efficiency of someone who has spent 40 years managing the complex communications that keep an empire functioning. Among the routine administrative documents, tax receipts, troop movements, diplomatic correspondence lies something that requires his personal attention. A formal complaint from the governor of a distant province about irregularities in grain shipments that could signal corruption, incompetence, or rebellion. The complaint letter that Marduk-nāṣir examines represents the highest evolution of Mesopotamian administrative communication. Written by the governor's chief scribe according to protocols developed over centuries of imperial administration, it demonstrates the sophisticated bureaucratic procedures that allow the Babylonian Empire to manage territories stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. The language of this provincial complaint exemplifies the diplomatic precision required for communication between different levels of imperial hierarchy. The governor must document serious problems that affect imperial revenues and provincial stability while avoiding accusations that might be interpreted as challenges to royal authority or central administration competence. This delicate balance requires communication skills that represent the pinnacle of professional, bureaucratic achievement. Maillard Ea-nāṣir's response to this complaint will influence not only the immediate grain shipment problems, but also the broader relationships between central and provincial administration that determine imperial stability. His letter must demonstrate royal concern for provincial needs, while maintaining central authority and establishing precedents that guide future administrative relationships. The standardized procedures that govern imperial complaint handling reflect centuries of experience in managing complex administrative relationships across diverse territories and populations. These procedures ensure consistent treatment of similar problems while allowing flexibility for unique circumstances that require individualized solutions. The systematic approach reduces arbitrariness and enhances the legitimacy of imperial administration. The training required for positions like Marduk Ea-nāṣir's chief administrator role includes specialized education in administrative communication that goes far beyond basic scribal skills. Imperial administrators must understand not only how to write effectively, but also how their communications affect political relationships, economic policies, and social stability throughout the empire. The filing systems maintained in the palace scribal office represent the most sophisticated information management technology available in the ancient world. Clay tablets are organized by date, subject matter, geographic origin, and administrative priority. Cross-referencing systems allow administrators to track complex relationships between different complaints and identify patterns that might indicate systemic problems, requiring policy changes. The investigation procedures triggered by significant administrative complaints involve coordination between multiple government departments and may extend over months or years. Marduk Ea-nāṣir must coordinate with military officials, treasury administrators, religious authorities, and provincial governors to gather information and implement solutions. This coordination requires communication skills that maintain cooperation while protecting imperial interests. The diplomatic implications of administrative complaints extend beyond their immediate subject matter to influence relationships with foreign powers who monitor imperial efficiency and stability. Effective complaint resolution demonstrates imperial competence while preventing problems from escalating into conflicts that might require military intervention or diplomatic concessions. The legal framework that guides imperial complaint resolution reflects sophisticated understanding of administrative law and procedure that anticipates developments in governmental systems by centuries. Imperial administrators operate according to established precedents while maintaining flexibility to address novel situations that require innovative solutions. The personnel management challenges created by administrative complaints require careful attention to the career implications of different resolution approaches. Marduk Ea-nāṣir must protect competent officials from unfair criticism while holding ineffective administrators accountable for their failures. This balance requires understanding of human psychology as well as administrative procedure. The economic analysis component of complaint investigation involves calculating the financial costs of different resolution approaches and selecting solutions that maximize imperial revenues while maintaining administrative efficiency. These economic considerations often conflict with political or diplomatic factors, requiring careful balancing that reflects the complexity of imperial administration. The communication networks that support imperial complaint resolution extend throughout the empire and include regular messengers, emergency communication systems, and backup procedures that ensure critical information reaches appropriate decision-makers. Despite the challenges of ancient transportation and communication technology, the quality control systems implemented for imperial correspondence ensure that all communications maintain appropriate standards for language, format, and content. These standards protect imperial dignity while facilitating effective communication between different administrative levels and geographic regions. The security considerations that govern imperial complaint handling include protecting sensitive information while ensuring that complaints receive appropriate investigation and response. Administrative procedures must balance transparency with security in ways that maintain public confidence without compromising imperial interests. The cultural adaptation requirements for imperial administration reflect the diversity of populations and traditions within the empire. Complaint resolution procedures must respect local customs while maintaining imperial standards and ensuring consistent treatment throughout the territories. The career development opportunities available to successful imperial administrators create incentive systems that attract talented individuals to government service while ensuring that experience and competence are rewarded with advancement and increased responsibility. The international comparison studies conducted by imperial administrators include analysis of administrative procedures used by other empires and kingdoms. This comparative research helps identify innovations that might improve imperial efficiency while avoiding approaches that have proven unsuccessful in other contexts. The technological innovations supported by imperial administration include improvements in writing materials, communication systems, and information storage methods that enhance administrative efficiency and effectiveness. These innovations often find applications beyond government use and contribute to broader economic and cultural development. The historical documentation maintained by imperial administrators creates valuable records that preserve information about administrative procedures, policy decisions, and resolution outcomes. These records provide precedents for future decisions while creating institutional memory that enhances administrative continuity and effectiveness. The public relations considerations that influence imperial complaint handling reflect understanding that administrative competence affects imperial legitimacy and popular support. Effective complaint resolution demonstrates governmental responsiveness while building confidence in imperial institutions. The crisis management protocols developed for handling serious administrative complaints include escalation procedures, emergency response systems, and contingency planning that prepare administrators for situations that threaten imperial stability or require immediate intervention. The performance evaluation systems used to assess administrative effectiveness include measures of complaint resolution success, relationship maintenance, and long-term outcomes that reflect the complex objectives of imperial administration. These evaluation systems help identify successful practices while providing feedback for continuous improvement. Modern public administration. Scholars studying ancient Mesopotamian bureaucratic procedures find remarkable sophistication in the complaint handling systems developed by imperial administrators. The attention to procedural fairness, systematic investigation, and relationship management established by administrators like Ea-nāṣir anticipated principles that remain relevant to contemporary governmental administration. The ethical frameworks that guide imperial complaint resolution reflect understanding that administrative power must be exercised responsibly to maintain legitimacy and effectiveness. These ethical considerations influence procedural development and decision-making processes throughout the imperial mot. Imperial bureaucrats and their perfectly worded wrath prove that effective government administration requires communication skills that balance multiple competing interests while achieving practical solutions to complex problems. The sophisticated bureaucratic procedures developed by ancient Mesopotamian administrators established patterns for governmental communication and administration that continue to influence political systems throughout the world. In the palace, scribal offices where Ea-nāṣir continues to manage the complex communications that sustain imperial administration. The foundations are being established for governmental procedures that will influence political development for millennia. The perfectly worded responses to administrative complaints demonstrate that effective governance requires not just power and resources, but sophisticated communication skills that maintain relationships while achieving necessary objectives. Chapter 5. The Merchant Wives and Their Domestic Disputes. Afternoon heat shimmers over the residential quarter of Ur, as Nintur sits in the cool shadows of her courtyard, carefully composing what may be the first consumer complaint letter. In human history, her husband, the successful textile merchant Ea-nāṣir, is away on a trading expedition to Anatolia, leaving her to manage both household affairs and the family business interests that generate their comfortable lifestyle. The elegant bronze brazier she purchased 3 months ago from the metalsmith Lugal Kazel has already begun, showing signs of poor workmanship that threaten both her cooking preparations and her social reputation. The complaint letter that Ea-nāṣir dictates to her personal scribe represents a significant expansion of written grievance procedures beyond purely commercial disputes between merchants. As the wife of a successful trader, she has learned to read and understands the basics of cuneiform writing. But the formal composition of complaint letters requires expertise that only professional scribes possess. Her adaptation of commercial complaint procedures to domestic issues reflects the growing influence of written communication throughout Mesopotamian society. The domestic economy managed by merchant wives like Nintur involves complex relationships with craftsmen, suppliers, and service providers that require the same attention to quality and reliability as international trade relationships. The standards she expects for household goods and services reflect her family's social status and economic capabilities, but also the practical requirements of managing a household that often serves as the base for business operations. The complaint about the defective brazier involves more than simple product failure. The brazier was specifically commissioned for entertaining important business guests during her husband's absence, and its poor performance could damage the family's reputation for hospitality and sophisticated taste. The metalsmith's failure to deliver goods of appropriate quality threatens both practical functionality and social standing. Nanni and Ea-nāṣir's personal scribe, a young woman named Gemini, who learned her skills at the temple school before entering domestic service, understands the delicate balance required for complaint letters written by women in Mesopotamian society. The communication must be firm enough to achieve desired results while remaining appropriate to gender expectations that emphasize diplomatic rather than confrontational approaches to conflict resolution. The language chosen for Nintur's complaint reflects her sophisticated understanding of social relationships and commercial obligations. Rather than making direct accusations about the metalsmith's competence or honesty, she documents specific problems with the brazier's performance and references to standards discussed during the original commissioning process. This approach protects relationships while creating pressure for appropriate response. The investigation procedures that Nintur employs before composing her complaint demonstrate systematic approach to evidence gathering that rivals formal commercial dispute procedures. She documents specific instances of poor performance, consults with other family members and servants about their observations, and researches comparable products to establish appropriate standards for quality and functionality. The social network that supports Nintur's complaint includes relationships with other merchant wives who have experience with similar domestic disputes. These women share information about reliable craftsmen, appropriate quality standards, and effective complaint procedures. Their collective knowledge creates informal consumer protection systems that help maintain standards throughout the local economy. The economic implications of domestic complaint letters extend beyond individual household concerns to influence the broader market for goods and services. Craftsmen who develop reputations for poor quality or inadequate customer service find their access to wealthy clients restricted, while those who respond appropriately to complaints develop customer loyalty that sustains their businesses during difficult periods. The legal framework that applies to Domestic disputes involves different procedures and standards than purely commercial conflicts. Household complaint letters must navigate family law, property rights, and social customs that affect women's ability to enter into independent business relationships. These legal considerations require specialized knowledge that influences both complaint composition and resolution procedures. The preservation of domestic complaint. Letters in Family Archives creates valuable records of household management practices and consumer behavior in ancient Mesopotamia. These documents provide insights into daily life, economic relationships, and social customs that complement official, commercial, and administrative records. The training that merchant wives receive in household management includes instruction in communication skills and dispute resolution techniques that prepare them to handle conflicts with suppliers and service providers. This education reflects recognition that domestic economy requires professional competence comparable to commercial business management. The seasonal patterns that influence domestic complaint procedures reflect the rhythms of household life and commercial activity. Complaints about heating equipment become critical during winter months, while problems with food storage equipment require immediate attention during harvest periods. Timing considerations affect both the urgency of complaints and the availability of alternative suppliers. The quality control expectations applied to domestic goods and services reflect the social status and economic capabilities of merchant families. The standards demanded by families like Nintours establish benchmarks that influence broader market expectations and contribute to overall improvements in craftsmanship and service quality. The gender considerations that influence domestic complaint procedures reflect the complex roles played by women in Mesopotamian economic life. While women may have limited independent legal authority, their control over household purchasing decisions gives them significant influence over local craftsmen and suppliers. Effective complaint procedures allow women to exercise this influence. Systematically, the diplomatic skills required for successful domestic complaint resolution include understanding the personal relationships and social obligations that influence craftsmen's willingness to provide remedies. Merchant wives must balance their economic power with social expectations that emphasize cooperation and relationship maintenance over purely commercial considerations. The documentation standards applied to domestic complaints ensure that household records maintain the same accuracy and completeness as commercial business documents. This systematic approach to record keeping reflects the professional competence of merchant families and provides evidence that supports their complaints when formal resolution becomes necessary. The cross-cultural dimensions of domestic complaint procedures reflect the international character of merchant family lifestyles. Goods and services obtained from foreign craftsmen or according to foreign standards require complaint procedures that account for different customs and expectations while maintaining appropriate quality. Standards. The innovation in complaint techniques developed by merchant wives often influences broader commercial practices. Women's attention to detail, relationship management skills, and long-term perspective contribute to improvements in complaint procedures that benefit the entire commercial community. The educational value of domestic complaint procedures includes teaching young family members about quality standards, relationship management, and effective communication. Children who observe their mothers handling domestic disputes learn skills that prepare them for their own future roles in commercial or administrative life. The economic research conducted through systematic domestic complaint analysis provides valuable information about market conditions, quality trends, and craftsman reliability. This information helps merchant families make informed purchasing decisions while contributing to broader understanding of local economic conditions. The consumer protection functions served by domestic complaint systems help maintain market standards and protect wealthy families from exploitation. The ability to document problems and seek formal remedies reduces the risks associated with purchasing expensive goods and services from unfamiliar suppliers. Modern consumer advocacy organizations. Studying ancient Mesopotamian domestic complaint. Procedures find sophisticated approaches to quality assurance and dispute resolution that anticipated contemporary consumer protection principles. The systematic documentation and diplomatic resolution techniques. Developed by merchant wives like Nintur, established patterns that remain relevant to modern consumer relationships. The social status considerations that influence domestic complaint. Outcomes reflect the important role played by merchant families in local economic life. Craftsmen understand that maintaining good relationships with wealthy families provides access to lucrative commissions and social connections that enhance their business prospects. The merchant wives and their domestic disputes prove that effective. Complaint procedures must account for the specific circumstances and relationships that characterize different types of economic activity. The adaptation of commercial complaint techniques to domestic situations demonstrates the flexibility and broad applicability of systematic approach to dispute resolution. In the comfortable courtyards where Nintur continues to manage her household, economy, and maintain her family's social position. The foundations are being established for consumer protection systems that will influence economic cruises for centuries. The domestic complaint letters composed by merchant wives represent more than individual grievances. They embody the principle that all economic relationships, regardless of scale or context, benefit from systematic procedures that protect quality standards while maintaining cooperative relationships. Chapter 6. The Temple Treasurers and Their Sacred Disputes. This sacred precinct of Marduk's temple in Babylon glows with the warm light of oil lamps as High Treasurer Nabiri-Mani reviews the monthly accounts, his careful calculations documenting the flow of offerings, donations, and commercial revenues that sustain one of the world's wealthiest religious institutions. Among the routine financial records lies a document that represents something new in the intersection of sacred and secular concerns. A formal complaint letter addressed to a merchant who has consistently delivered substandard incense that compromises the dignity of religious ceremonies. The complaint letter that Nabiri-Mani prepares reflects the unique challenges faced by religious institutions that must maintain spiritual standards while engaging in commercial relationships necessary for their material support. The temple's requirements for ceremonial supplies involve quality standards that extend beyond simple commercial considerations to include religious appropriateness, ritual purity, and symbolic significance. The merchant in question, Ea-nāṣir, has supplied incense to the temple for over a decade, but recent deliveries have included materials that produce irregular smoke, unpleasant odors, and ash residues that stain the sacred altars. These quality problems affect not only the aesthetic dimensions of religious ceremonies, but also their spiritual effectiveness according to traditional religious belief. Nabiri-Mani's position as High Treasurer requires him to balance multiple competing interests in ways that maintain both spiritual integrity and practical functionality. His complaint letter must address commercial deficiencies while preserving relationships essential for temple operations. The diplomatic challenges are complicated by the religious context that adds sacred dimensions to what might otherwise be purely commercial disputes. The preparation of temple complaint letters follows specialized procedures that account for the religious significance of institutional communications. Language must reflect appropriate reverence while maintaining business-like precision. References to divine expectations and sacred obligations add weight to complaints while creating pressure for responsive action from suppliers. The investigation procedures employed by temple administrators to document quality problems involve consultation with priests who understand the spiritual requirements for ceremonial materials. This religious expertise complements commercial knowledge in ways that create comprehensive understanding of how supply problems affect temple operations and religious effectiveness. The economic implications of temple complaints extend throughout. Local commercial networks, as temples represent major customers whose satisfaction affects merchant reputations and business prospects. Craftsmen and suppliers who maintain good relationships with religious institutions enjoy competitive advantages that sustain their businesses during difficult economic periods. The documentation standards applied to temple complaints reflect the institutional importance of religious organizations and their need to maintain detailed records for administrative, legal, and historical purposes. Temple archives preserve complaint letters alongside other institutional documents that provide comprehensive records of operational activities and decision-making processes. The seasonal considerations that influence temple complaint procedures reflect the rhythms of religious calendar that determine when different ceremonial materials are needed, and quality problems become most critical. Holiday preparations require reliable supplies that meet exacting standards, while routine periods allow more flexibility for addressing problems and implementing solutions. The international dimensions of temple supply relationships create complaint procedures that must account for religious differences, cultural variations, and diplomatic sensitivities. Foreign suppliers may not understand local religious requirements, while domestic suppliers working with foreign temples must adapt their products to its unfamiliar ceremonial needs. The quality control systems implemented by temple administrators include inspection procedures, testing methods, and approval processes that ensure ceremonial materials meet appropriate standards before being accepted for religious use. These systematic approaches reduce the need for complaints while providing documentation when problems occur despite preventive measures. The social responsibility considerations that guide temple complaint procedures reflect the important role played by religious institutions in community life and economic development. Temples must balance their purchasing power with concern for local craftsmen and suppliers, whose livelihoods depend on institutional patronage. The legal framework that governs temple complaint resolution includes religious law, commercial regulations, and institutional policies that create complex jurisdictional considerations. Temple complaints may be resolved through internal procedures, commercial arbitration, or formal legal proceedings, depending on the nature and severity of the problems involved. The training required for temple administrative positions includes education in religious requirements, commercial practices, and communication skills that prepare administrators to handle the complex relationships involved in institutional purchasing and supplier management. This specialized education reflects the professional competence required for effective temple administration. The diplomatic skills required for temple complaint resolution include understanding the religious sensitivities and commercial interests that influence supplier behavior. Temple administrators must maintain institutional dignity while achieving practical solutions that serve both spiritual and material needs. The precedent-setting functions served by temple complaints influence broader standards for ceremonial materials and religious supplies throughout the region. Solutions developed for temple disputes often become models for other religious institutions and influence commercial practices that extend beyond purely religious markets. The preservation functions performed by temple archives ensure that complaint letters and their resolution provide historical records of religious practices, commercial relationships, and administrative procedures. These documents contribute to understanding of ancient religious life and economic organization that extends far beyond their immediate practical purposes. The educational value of temple complaint procedures includes training young administrators in professional communication skills while providing practical experience in relationship management and problem solving. This on-the-job education creates expertise that benefits both religious institutions and broader commercial communities. The innovation in complaint techniques developed through temple experience often influences secular commercial practices. Religious institutions' attention to quality, relationship maintenance, and systematic procedures contributes to improvements in commercial communication that benefit entire business communities. The ethical frameworks that guide temple complaint. Procedures reflect religious values and moral obligations that influence how disputes are approached and resolved. These ethical considerations create standards for fair dealing and appropriate behavior that extend beyond immediate commercial relationships. The public relations considerations that affect temple complaint handling reflect the important role played by religious institutions in community life and public opinion. Effective complaint resolution maintains institutional credibility while demonstrating responsible stewardship of community resources and religious trust. The crisis management protocols developed for serious temple supply problems include emergency procurement procedures, alternative supplier networks, and contingency planning that ensures religious ceremonies can continue despite commercial disruptions or supplier failures. The performance evaluation systems used to assess temple administrative effectiveness include measures of complaint resolution success, supplier relationship quality, and long-term operational outcomes that reflect the complex objectives of religious institutional management. Modern religious consent administration scholars studying ancient temple management practices find sophisticated approaches to institutional purchasing and supplier relationship management that anticipated contemporary organizational procedures. The balance between spiritual requirements and practical considerations established by temple administrators like Nabiri-Mani remains relevant too. Modern religious institutional management, the resource allocation considerations that influence temple complaint procedures include balancing quality requirements with budget constraints while maintaining the operational capacity necessary for effective religious programming and community service. The temple treasures and their sacred disputes prove that effective complaint procedures must account for the specific values and objectives that characterize different types of institutional relationships. The adaptation of commercial complaint techniques to religious contexts demonstrates how fundamental communication principles can be applied across diverse organizational settings. In the sacred precincts where Nabiri-Mani continues to manage the complex relationships that sustain religious institutional life, the foundations are being established for administrative procedures that will influence religious organizations for millennia. The sacred complaint letters composed by temple treasurers represent more than institutional communications. They embody the principle that all relationships, secular and sacred, benefit from systematic procedures that maintain standards while preserving cooperation and mutual respect. Chapter 7. The international traders and their cross-border conflicts. The harbor of Dilmun sparkles in the morning sun as merchant captain Gimelson supervises the loading of his ship for the return voyage to his experienced eye cataloging the copper ingots, pearls, and exotic woods that represent months of careful trading throughout the Persian Gulf region. But hidden among his commercial cargo lies something that may prove more valuable than precious metals: a collection of complaint letters, written in multiple languages and scripts that document his ongoing dispute with suppliers whose promises prove as ephemeral as morning mist. The international trading relationships that sustain Mesopotamian prosperity require complaint procedures sophisticated enough to handle disputes between parties who may never meet face-to-face, speak different languages, and operate according to different commercial customs and legal traditions. Gimelson's current difficulties with a copper supplier from distant mountains illustrate the challenges of maintaining quality standards and commercial relationships across vast distances and cultural boundaries. The complaint letter that Gimelson carries to documents problems that extend far beyond simple quality control issues. The copper ingots he received in Dilmun match the physical specifications agreed upon in his original contract. But analysis by local metalworkers reveals impurities that make the metal unsuitable for the fine work demanded by his customers. The supplier's apparent compliance with literal contract terms, while violating quality expectations, creates legal and diplomatic challenges that require sophisticated data. Resolution procedures, the multilingual documentation required for international complaint procedures reflects the cosmopolitan nature of ancient trade networks. Gimelson's complaint letter exists in 3 versions: Akkadian for submission to Mesopotamian commercial authorities, Sumerian for record-keeping purposes according to traditional practices, and a simplified pictographic version for communication with suppliers who lack sophisticated writing systems. The translation challenges involved in international complaint procedures require specialized expertise that goes beyond simple linguistic competence. Commercial translators must understand not only vocabulary and grammar, but also the legal and cultural concepts that determine how complaints are interpreted and resolved in different societies. Misunderstanding can transform legitimate grievances into diplomatic incidents that damage commercial relationships. The time delays inherent in international complaint resolution creates additional challenges that domestic dispute procedures need not address. Messages may take months to travel between disputing parties, during which time commercial conditions change. Memories fade, and evidence becomes difficult to verify. These temporal challenges require complaint procedures that account for the realities of ancient communication and transportation systems. The legal jurisdiction questions that arise in international commercial disputes reflect the absence of unified commercial law that could provide consistent standards for dispute resolution. Gimelson must navigate between Mesopotamian commercial law, Dilmun customs, and the traditional practices of his suppliers' home regions. This legal complexity requires diplomatic skills that rival those of formal ambassadors. The cultural adaptation requirements for international complaint procedures include understanding how different societies approach commercial relationships, authority structures, and conflict resolution. What seems like appropriate firmness in Mesopotamian commercial culture might be interpreted as insulting aggression by trading partners from societies that emphasize consensus and indirect communication. The quality verification challenges in international trade require establishing inspection procedures and quality standards that can be applied consistently across different locations and cultural contexts. Gimelson must document copper quality using measurements and descriptions that will be meaningful to parties who may not share his technical expertise or commercial experience. The commercial arbitration systems developed for international trade disputes represent some of the most sophisticated legal innovations of the ancient world. International trading centers like Dilmun develop specialized institutions and expert arbitrators who understand the complex commercial relationships that characterize long-distance trade. These arbitration systems provide alternatives to formal legal proceedings that might be impossible to pursue across international boundaries. The diplomatic implications of commercial complaint procedures extend beyond their immediate business purposes to influence political relationships between different regions and kingdoms. Successful complaint resolution demonstrates the reliability and sophistication of commercial relationships that support diplomatic cooperation and cultural exchange, the insurance and risk management considerations that influence international susceptible complaint procedures include understanding how commercial disputes affect the broader trading relationships that determine profitability and business sustainability. Gimelson must balance his immediate interests in resolving current problems with long-term needs to maintain access to essential suppliers and markets. The documentation standards applied to International complaints must account for the various legal and administrative systems that may need to review and act upon complaint letters. International commercial documents require greater precision and completeness than domestic business correspondence because verification and clarification may be difficult or possible to obtain quickly. The enforcement mechanisms available for international complaint resolution reflect the limited authority that any single political system can exercise over foreign commercial relationships. Successful international complaint procedures must rely more heavily on relationship maintenance, reputation effects, and mutual commercial interests than on formal legal sanctions. The standardization efforts that emerge from international complaint experience contribute to the development of shared commercial practices and legal concepts that facilitate trade relationships across cultural boundaries. Common approaches to quality measurement, contract interpretation, and dispute resolution reduce the transaction costs associated with international trade while improving the reliability of commercial relationships. The training requirements for international traders include education in cross-cultural communication, comparative commercial law, and diplomatic negotiation techniques that prepare merchants to handle the complex relationships involved in international business. This specialized education creates professional competence that benefits entire commercial communities. The information networks that support international complaint resolution include formal and informal communication systems that allow traders to share information about supplier reliability, quality standards, and effective dispute resolution techniques. These networks create collective knowledge that reduces individual risks while improving overall commercial efficiency. The seasonal and geographic factors that influence international complaint procedures include understanding how weather, political conditions, and economic cycles affect commercial relationships and dispute resolution possibilities. International traders must coordinate their complaint procedures with the practical realities of ancient transportation and communication systems. The technology transfer aspects of international commercial relationships include sharing complaint resolution techniques and quality control procedures that improve commercial practices throughout trading networks. Innovations developed in one region often find applications in distant markets. Through the international trading relationships that carry both goods and knowledge, the economic development implications of effective international complaint procedures include reducing the transaction costs and risks associated with long-distance trade while improving the quality and reliability of commercial relationships. These improvements contribute to economic growth and cultural exchange that benefit entire regions and civilizations. Modern international business. Scholars studying ancient commercial relationships find sophisticated approaches to cross-cultural dispute resolution that anticipated many contemporary international business practices. The attention to relationship maintenance, cultural sensitivity, and systematic procedure development established by traders like Gimel-Sin remains relevant to modern international commercial relationships. The competitive advantages created by superior complaint resolution capabilities include enhanced reputation for reliability, improved access to international markets, and stronger relationships with foreign suppliers and customers. These advantages contribute to commercial success that sustains trading enterprises through difficult economic periods and competitive pressures. The international traders and their cross-border conflicts prove that effective complaint procedures must be adapted to the specific challenges and opportunities that characterize different types of commercial relationships. The development of international commercial dispute resolution procedures demonstrates how human creativity and cooperation can overcome the barriers created by distance, cultural differences, and political boundaries. In the trading centers where Gimel-Sin continues to negotiate the complex relationships that sustain international commerce, the foundations are being established for commercial procedures that will influence international business for millennia. The cross-border complaint letters and resolution procedures developed by ancient international traders represent more than commercial communications. They embody the principle that ecumenical cooperation can transcend cultural and political differences. When supported by systematic procedures that protect legitimate interests while maintaining mutually beneficial relationships. Chapter 8. The Legal Scribes and Their Precedent-Setting Disputes. Courthouse of Sippar fills with the measured voices of legal scholars as Chief Judge Ea-nāṣir reviews the most complex commercial dispute of his 30-year career. A case involving complaint letters that have evolved from simple business correspondence into formal legal documents that will influence commercial law throughout the Babylonian Empire. The intricate proceedings before him demonstrate how systematic complaint procedures have created the foundation for legal systems that protect commercial relationships, while providing fair resolution for disputes that cannot be settled through informal negotiation. The case currently before Judge Ea-nāṣir involves a three-party dispute that began with a simple complaint letter about delayed grain deliveries but has evolved into questions of contract interpretation, liability allocation, and damages calculation that require sophisticated legal analysis. The merchant and Likasam's original complaint about late deliveries from farmer Adad Sumu triggered a counter-complaint from the farmer, claiming that transportation problems were caused by negligence by the shipping agent Marduk Nadine. Each party has produced documentation supporting their position, creating a complex legal puzzle that requires careful analysis of evidence, precedent, and commercial custom. The legal framework that guides Judge Ea-nāṣir's decision-making reflects centuries of commercial dispute resolution experience that has gradually created systematic approaches to common legal problems. The Code of Hammurabi provides general principles for commercial relationships, but specific applications to complex multi-party disputes require judicial interpretation that creates precedents for future cases. The evidence evaluation procedures employed in formal legal proceedings require analysis of complaint letters as legal documents rather than simple business correspondence. Judge Ea-nāṣir must determine not only what the documents say, but also what they legally mean according to established standards for contract interpretation. Evidence admissibility and burden of proof. The precedent-setting implications of formal legal decisions create responsibilities that extend far beyond immediate dispute resolution. Judge Ea-nāṣir understands that his decision will influence future commercial relationships and legal proceedings throughout the empire. This precedent-setting function requires careful consideration of broad implications as well as specific case facts. The legal representation provided by professional advocates reflects the growing sophistication of commercial law and the specialized expertise required for effective dispute resolution. The advocates representing each party in this complex case have spent years studying commercial law, evidence, procedures, and advocacy techniques that enable them to present their clients' positions effectively within formal legal proceedings. The witness examination procedures used in commercial legal proceedings require systematic approaches to testimony evaluation that can distinguish between reliable and unreliable evidence. Judge Ea-nāṣir must assess the credibility of merchants, farmers, shipping agents, and expert witnesses whose testimony may be influenced by commercial interests, personal relationships, or limited knowledge. The damages calculation methods applied to commercial disputes reflect sophisticated understanding of economic relationships and commercial consequences that extends beyond simple monetary compensation. Judge Ea-nāṣir must consider not only immediate financial losses, but also long-term effects on business relationships, reputation, and future commercial opportunities. The appeal procedures available for significant commercial disputes provide safeguards against judicial error while ensuring that important legal questions receive appropriate review. The hierarchical court system allows complex cases to be reviewed by higher courts with greater expertise and authority. creating additional opportunities for precedent, development, and legal refinement. The enforcement mechanisms available for legal judgments in commercial disputes include various sanctions and remedies that can compel compliance while protecting legitimate commercial interests. Judge Shamash Hazir must select enforcement approaches that achieve justice while maintaining the commercial relationships necessary for continued economic activity. The documentation requirements for formal legal proceedings create permanent records that serve multiple purposes beyond immediate case resolution. Legal records provide precedents for future decisions, evidence for appeal proceedings, and historical documentation of legal system development and commercial practice evolution. The professional training required for legal careers includes specialized education in commercial law, evidence evaluation, and judicial procedure that prepares lawyers and judges to handle the complex relationships involved in commercial dispute resolution. This professional education creates expertise that enhances the quality and consistency of legal decision-making. The ethical frameworks that guide legal professionals in commercial dispute resolution include standards for professional conduct, conflict of interest, management, and fair representation that maintain public confidence in legal system integrity, while protecting individual rights and interests. The international legal cooperation that develops through commercial dispute resolution includes recognition of foreign legal decisions, coordination between different legal systems, and development of shared legal principles that facilitate international trade relationships. The economic analysis components of commercial legal proceedings include assessment of market conditions, commercial practices, and economic consequences that inform legal decision-making and ensure that legal remedies achieve practical effectiveness in commercial contexts. The social impact considerations that influence crucial legal decisions include understanding how legal precedents affect broader commercial relationships, economic development, and social stability throughout the empire. Legal decisions must balance individual justice with community welfare and economic prosperity. The innovation in legal procedures that emerges from commercial dispute resolution includes development of new evidence evaluation techniques, case management procedures, and remedy structures that improve legal system effectiveness while reducing the time and cost associated with formal dispute resolution. The quality control systems implemented for legal decision-making include review procedures, consistency monitoring, and performance evaluation that ensure legal professionals maintain appropriate standards, while continuously improving their effectiveness and professional competence. The continuing education requirements for legal professionals include ongoing study of legal developments, commercial practice changes, and procedural innovations that keep lawyers and judges current with evolving legal and commercial conditions. The public information systems that support legal system operation include publication of legal decisions, procedural guidelines, and commercial law summaries that help merchants and other commercial participants understand their rights and obligations under current legal standards. The crisis management protocols developed for handling complex legal disputes include emergency procedures, expedited review processes, and alternative dispute resolution mechanisms that provide options when standard legal procedures prove inadequate for particular circumstances or time constraints. Modern legal scholars studying ancient Mesopotamian commercial law find sophisticated approaches to dispute resolution that anticipated many contemporary legal principles and procedures. The systematic development of precedent-setting legal decisions, established by judges like Shamash Hazir, created foundations for legal systems that continue to influence commercial law throughout the world. The research and development activities conducted by legal institutions include analysis of legal system effectiveness, identification of procedural improvements, and development of new legal concepts that enhance the quality and efficiency of commercial dispute resolution. The legal scribes and their precedent-setting disputes prove that effective legal systems emerge from systematic attention to the practical problems that arise in commercial relationships and the creative development of procedures that protects legitimate interests while maintaining social cooperation and economic prosperity. In the courthouses where Judge Ea-nāṣir continues to develop legal precedents that will influence commercial relationships for centuries. The foundations are being established for legal systems that balance individual rights with community welfare while providing fair and efficient resolution for the complex disputes that characterize sophisticated commercial societies. The precedent setting. Legal decisions created through formal commercial dispute resolution represent more than individual case outcomes. They embody the principle that systematic legal procedures can protect commercial relationships while providing justice that enhances social stability and economic development throughout human civilization. Epilogue. The eternal echo of Clay Voice's chief archivist, Nebuchadnezzar, carefully places the newly acquired complaint tablet among the thousands of similar documents that fill the great library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh. His weathered hands, treating each clay tablet with the reverence due to artifacts that preserve the voices of merchants, administrators, and citizens who lived centuries before his time. The tablet before him, worn smooth by countless handling but still clearly legible, contains a familiar complaint about short-weighted silver that could have been written yesterday, demonstrating the timeless nature of commercial disputes and human frustration with unmet expectations. The vast archive surrounding Nebuchadnezzar represents more than a collection of ancient business documents. It embodies the cumulative wisdom of civilizations that discovered how written communication could transform temporary disagreements into permanent solutions. The complaint letters that fill these shelves span over a millennium of human experience, documenting the evolution of commercial relationships, legal procedures, and social customs that created the foundation for all subsequent developments. In business communication and dispute resolution, the patterns that emerge from systematic study of these ancient complaint letters reveal fundamental truths about human nature and commercial relationships that transcend time and culture. The same problems that frustrated Mesopotamian merchants continue to challenge modern businesses: quality control failures, delivery delays, payment disputes, and communication breakdowns. The solutions developed by ancient accountants and administrators remain remarkably relevant to contemporary commercial relationships. The linguistic evolution documented in the archive shows how complaint letter language became more sophisticated and diplomatic over time as writers learned to balance firmness with courtesy, specificity with flexibility, and individual interests with relationship maintenance. This evolution reflects growing understanding that effective communication requires attention to psychological and social factors as well as technical accuracy and legal precision. The geographic spread of complaint letter traditions can be traced through the Archive's international collection, which includes documents from throughout the ancient Near East and beyond. Trade relationships carried both goods and communication techniques across vast distances, creating shared standards for commercial correspondence that facilitated business relationships between diverse cultures and societies. The institutional impact of systematic complaint procedures extends throughout ancient society as temples, palaces, and commercial organizations adopt similar approaches to dispute resolution and relationship management. The standardization of communication procedures reduces uncertainty and transaction costs while improving the quality of commercial relationships throughout the economy. The technological innovations driven by complaint letter requirements include improvements in writing materials, filing systems, and copying procedures that enhance the efficiency and reliability of business communication. These technological developments often find applications beyond their original commercial purposes, contributing to broader advances in education, administration, and cultural preservation. The legal legacy of ancient complaint letters can be traced through centuries of subsequent legal development as the principles and procedures established by Mesopotamian merchants and administrators influence legal systems throughout the world. The systematic documentation of disputes, evidence evaluation procedures, and precedent-setting decisions created foundations for legal traditions that continue to shape commercial law and civil litigation. The educational influence of complaint letter traditions includes the development of professional training programs that teach communication skills, relationship management techniques, and dispute resolution procedures to future generations of merchants, administrators, and legal professionals. These educational programs create institutional memory that preserves knowledge while enabling continuous improvement and adaptation. The cultural significance of complaint letters extends beyond their practical commercial functions to include their role in preserving social history and demonstrating the sophisticated communication capabilities of ancient civilizations. These documents provide insights into daily life, economic relationships, and social customs that complement official historical records while revealing the human dimensions of ancient commercial life. The diplomatic applications of complaint letter techniques influence international relationships as the communication skills developed for commercial dispute resolution find applications in political negotiation, treaty implementation, and conflict resolution between different kingdoms and empires. The systematic approach to relationship maintenance proves valuable for diplomatic as well as commercial purposes. The economic impact of effective complaint procedures can be measured in increased trade volumes, expanded commercial networks, and enhanced economic stability that results from improved dispute resolution and relationship management. The reduction in transaction costs and commercial risks contributes to economic development that benefits entire civilizations. The social transformations enabled by written complaint procedures include changes in power relationships, legal rights, and individual agency that result from the ability to document grievances and seek formal remedies. Written communication empowers individuals to challenge authority and seek justice in ways that were impossible, when disputes could only be addressed through oral communication and personal relationships. The psychological insights revealed through ancient complaint letters demonstrate sophisticated understanding of human motivation, emotional management, and persuasive communication that anticipates modern developments in psychology and communication theory. The attention to tone, timing, and relationship dynamics shows remarkable sensitivity to factors that influence human behavior and decision-making. The preservation challenges faced by ancient archives include protecting clay tablets from physical deterioration while maintaining access for scholars and administrators who need to reference historical precedents and accumulated wisdom. These preservation efforts represent some of humanity's first systematic approaches to knowledge, management, and institutional memory. The continuing relevance of ancient complaint letter principles is demonstrated by their applicability to modern business communication, legal procedures, and relationship management challenges. The fundamental insights about human nature, commercial relationships, and effective communication transcend technological changes and remain valuable guides for contemporary practitioners. The global influence of Mesopotamian complaint letter traditions can be traced through subsequent civilizations that adapted and refined these communication techniques for their own commercial and administrative needs. The spread of writing systems, legal concepts, and business practices carries the influence of ancient innovations throughout human civilization. Modern business, Historians studying ancient complaint letters find sophisticated approaches to customer service, quality control, and relationship management that anticipated contemporary business practices by thousands of years. The systematic attention to customer satisfaction and long-term relationship maintenance established principles that remain relevant to modern commercial success. The technological parallels between ancient and modern communication systems include similarities in information storage, retrieval procedures, and quality control that demonstrate continuity in human approaches to information management despite dramatic changes in available technology. The fundamental challenges of organizing, preserving, and accessing information remain constant across technological generations. The philosophical implications of complaint letter traditions include their demonstration that written communication can serve justice, preserve relationships, and create social progress through systematic attention to fairness and mutual benefit. These insights contribute to broader understanding of how communication technologies can enhance human cooperation and social development. The research methodologies developed for analyzing ancient complaint letters provide models for studying historical business practices, social relationships, and communication evolution that inform contemporary scholarship in multiple disciplines, including history, archaeology, linguistics, and business studies. The eternal echo of clay voices proves that effective communication transcends time, technology, and cultural boundaries when guided by fundamental principles of honesty, respect, and mutual benefit. The complaint letters preserved in ancient archives speak across millennia to remind us that human nature remains constant, while communication techniques can always be improved through systematic attention to relationship quality and practical effectiveness. On the quiet archive chambers where Ea-nāṣir continues his work of preservation and organization, the voices of ancient merchants and administrators continue to offer wisdom about the challenges and opportunities that characterize human commercial relationships. Their clay tablets may seem primitive compared to modern communication technology, but their insights into human nature and effective communication remain as valuable today as they were 4,000 years ago. The legacy of Mesopotamian accountants who invented the first complaint letters extends far beyond their immediate commercial purposes to include their demonstration that systematic communication procedures can enhance human cooperation, protect individual rights, and create social progress through attention to fairness and mutual benefit. Their innovations in written communication established foundations for civilization itself, proving that the most powerful technologies are often those that help human beings understand and cooperate with each other more effectively. The clay tablets that preserve these ancient voices will outlast most modern communication media, ensuring that future generations can continue to learn from the wisdom of merchants and administrators who discovered that written complaints, properly composed and diplomatically delivered, can transform conflict into cooperation and temporary disagreements into permanent solutions that benefit entire societies.